I Hate the News is the weekly news bulletin from I Hate Politics podcast, a show about a human activity we love to hate. I'm Sunil Dasgupta. The week of July 16th, 2024. WMATA is rationalizing its bus network. What's the trade-off? Maryland is looking at holding back third graders who don't read at grade level. That's a lot of kids. Virginia Governor Youngkin orders the State Department of Education to put in place new procedures to remove cell phones from classrooms by January 2025. The National Education Association, NEA, the countrywide teachers union to which locals like MCEA affiliate, have locked out their own employees, and much more. Stay with us.
I thought I know by now. It's been way too quiet since the circus left town.
I Hate Politics is brought to you by UMBC's Political Science Program. If your goal is to make a meaningful impact with a career in local, state, or federal government, discover what this degree can do for you. Learn more at shadygrove.umbc.edu.
I Hate Politics is a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools and streets, and our local governments as they function in diverse and democratic societies. This means our politics are messy, dirty, sometimes corrupt, with often self-serving politicians. But no matter how much we may hate politics, we are never exempt from it, even when we refuse to participate. In fact, the purpose of politics is to keep society functioning precisely when we don't agree with each other, like now. Music for this episode comes from Silver Spring power pop band Airport 77s. Andy Sullivan on vocals and guitar, Chuck Dolan on bass, and John Kelly on drums. The songs come from their album, We Realize You Have a Choice.
Two kids parked in a dead-end lane, heater blowing, radio playing, telling each other nothing's gonna change. One of them's telling the truth. How were those kids supposed to guess that this would be their last caress? They'd be thinking about that moment till their very last breath, singing those parked car blues. Do you love me? I need to know for sure.
The Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, WMATA, which runs Metro and the Metro buses, is rationalizing its bus routes after decades. I spoke with Sean Robertson, who sits on the board of Action Committee for Transit, a local advocacy group.
This kind of redesign is long overdue since many of Metro's current bus routes were designed around the streetcar network that existed 50 years ago. And back then, Montgomery County was a sleepy bedroom community in need of rush hour connections to jobs in Washington, D.C. It's transformed into, a series of vibrant urban hubs that are strung together by the two branches of the Red Line, but certainly in need of a lot more connectivity, particularly midday, late night, weekend connectivity than the current bus network provides. I think, while certainly there are going to be some pain points where people have gotten used to the current network, and there are things that, I could see improving. On the whole, this network does deliver on that vision of higher frequency, all day service, to those urban centers and between those urban centers, as opposed to just in and out of downtown DC.
WMATA is only one bus service provider. There are several others. I mean, Arlington has its own, and Fairfax has its own. Montgomery County has its own, DC as well. So are those agencies also sort of working together on this? Is this like a mega agency effort, or is it just limited to WMATA?
The history of this system redesign, WMATA started it and released in 2023 their visionary network, which truly would have been a dream with connections up to Columbia and up to Urbana and Germantown and across to Tysons with 24/7 service on 6 Montgomery County routes. I think many of those connections hopefully are going to be served by MCDOT's Ride-On Reimagine study, which is looking at how to redesign Ride-On. Now, they came out with their proposals this spring, but they have committed to coordinate with WMATA on their Better Bus initiative. It's a little bit worrisome that if you look at the Ride-On Reimagine study as it exists right now, it anticipates all of those great things that were in the Better Bus visionary network released in early 23. Many of those things are now missing from this redesign. Essentially, that visionary network would have required 35% more resources to implement. And this proposed redesign works with Metrobus's existing budget. So there are a lot of hard choices here, unfortunately. And hopefully, Ride-On Reimagine will be able to adapt and fill some of those gaps because I think there are some real concerns about gaps left in this network. And many of these connections do take advantage of the fact that since many of these routes were designed, we've extended the Red Line to Glenmont in 98. We built the Ride-On Flash out to Burtonsville. It takes advantage of those connections. But certainly there are going to be impacts of people who currently depend on that lifeline of bus-only service to be able to get down into DC on that 7-day bus pass. And now you've got, say what was the L8 that now stops at Bethesda as opposed to continuing down to Chevy Chase Circle, where people could connect to the L2 to get into DC, for example. WMATA's regional bus pass, it's $13.50 for 7 days. Compare that to a bus plus rail pass for 7 days, that's $40.50.
Thing that's falling off the network are these bus-only routes that used to be there before. And now the effort is to move towards multimodality. So bus, metro, that combination is what they're trying to push. Is that correct?
I mean, at least that's what I see in this network. Interestingly, the initial feedback that the WMATA gathered on this, 59% of riders said they'd prefer to have longer routes and fewer transfers. But that's not what you see in Montgomery County. I think, maybe an emblematic example of that is that currently, if you're traveling from Silver Spring, you've got the Q series going up to Shady Grove. You've got the Y series going up to Olney. Under this proposal, you just have a short segment of the M20 that goes between Silver Spring and Wheaton, and then you'd have to change to get up to Rockville or to get up to Olney. But on the whole, I mean, heck, it's going to, it's a more efficient use of our transportation infrastructure we've invested in. It's, going to hopefully get many people to their destinations faster. There is just that cost component.
Sean Robertson, thank you. School's out, but education news doesn't stop. Maryland's state education leaders are looking at a plan to hold back third graders who don't read at grade level. William Ford of Maryland Matters covered the story.
I'll mention Dr. Kerry Wright, the superintendent of Maryland Public Schools. There was a discussion last month, and now it's out in the public sphere about a proposed literacy policy in Maryland to have third graders held back based on they don't read, achieve certain reading scores on state tests, or as the quote, demonstrate sufficient reading skills for promotion to grade 4. Believe it or not, there's maybe half the states either have particular state policies, or they allow their local school districts to implement that particular policy. Why is that? Well, there's a big push across the country to boost literacy scores. And Maryland, you would think of Maryland as this high-achieving, high-rich state where everything is good. Well, Maryland ranks 40th in the nation on the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And that's also known as the nation's report card. And last month, the state board went and pushed some major ambitious goals. And one of them is, a matter of fact, at that meeting, they met with the Blueprint for Maryland's Future Accountability and Implementation Board and part of one of those goals is to improve test scores on literacy for students in grades 3 through 8th from 48% that was last year to 63% in the 2025-26 school year. So literacy is a big push. And the whole gist of that is literally on this simple premise. If a young person can't read, then it will be harder for that young person to succeed in life.
Question is not how many kids you hold back, but how do you enable schools to succeed so that very few students are actually held back? What is that plan?
There was it was $350,000 gift that is bestowed upon the state to actually provide training to thousands of educators. And that will include paraprofessionals who will get this particular training for free and help with reading and literacy programs for students. Now, Cheryl Boast, who is the Maryland State Education Association president, aka Teachers Union, she had raised a very good point in terms of, let's say, because one of the parts of the plan is offering before or after school tutoring. Well, there's a teacher shortage, not only in Maryland, but all over the country. Where are these individuals going to come from?
Will Ford, thank you for taking the time. Montgomery County Public Schools presented test score data to the County Council's Education and Culture Committee, showing that current student performance is still behind pre-pandemic levels, and the difference in performance between ethnic and racial groups has grown since 2017-2018. The biggest learning losses have been among Latinos, followed by Blacks. Between 2017 and 2024, the gap between the percentage of Black students and the percentage of white students who meet 2 or more literacy measures increased by 6.2%, and the gap between Hispanic and white students increased by 11.8%. In Virginia, Governor Youngkin ordered the State Department of Education to put in place rules to remove cell phones from classrooms by January 2025. Cell phones in classrooms is a big looming debate that cuts across political divides. The National Education Association, NEA, is the largest union in the country, with more members than the Teamsters and other big names. State and local education associations, including the Maryland State Education Association and the Montgomery County Education Association, affiliate with this national organization. There is a competing national union called the American Federation of Teachers, which functions more like a traditional union than an association. NEA, whose headquarters are based in Washington, D.C., has now gone ahead and locked out its own employees. In the spring this year, NEA and NEA staff organization called NESO failed to arrive at a new contract, which led NESO members to authorize a strike, which they did in grand fashion at the NEA's National Convention in Philadelphia. President Biden, who was supposed to speak, canceled so as not to cross the picket line. In retaliation, the NEA management locked out its employees. Here is NEA Staff Organization President Robin McLean.
Of NESO that we don't deserve a better way of living through our salaries, through our working conditions, through whatever agreements that we come to the table with, our discipline, all of that. They look at us like we are not humans, for real. We have to stand the course.
Yep.
We have to see this to the end. The very end.
Meanwhile, in a sign of our Gilded Age, Johns Hopkins University will offer tuition-free medical school starting fall 2024 because alumni and former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg gave the university $1 billion. Montgomery County Republican leader Riordan Sullivan, who chairs a political committee that has received over $100,000 in real estate money, has submitted more signatures to support his ballot question, limiting the county executive to 2 terms. The Montgomery County Council is working on a competing ballot question and other charter amendments, which must be finalized by July end. That's all for this episode. Be sure to check out our feature interview series that comes out Friday mornings. I Hate Politics is produced by me, Sunil Dasgupta, and assistant producer, Adama Gay, with support from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I direct UMBC's political science program at the universities at Shady Grove in Montgomery County, where, among other things, we explore and learn about politics, government, and society close to home. Music for this episode comes from Silver Spring power pop band Airport 77s. Andy Sullivan on vocals and guitar, Chuck Dolan on bass, and John Kelly on drums. The songs come from their album, We Realize You Have a Choice. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone else who might want to, please email us at producer@ihppod.org. See you next time.
There's a lot of things wrong this summer. A lot of things wrong this summer. It's true. I hate the bucks, I hate the sun, I hate the crowds, I hate the heat, I hate the street festivals with those bands